Hello there, everybody. It's Guildmaster Dan, and I have a random vlog for you. I've recently watched I recently watched a review that the Gentleman Gamer did of Numenera, and I was essentially he inspired in me his excitement for the game, and I decided to check it out. And I just thought I'd share my thoughts with you guys because as I'm reading it along, I find that I'm getting lots of thoughts on the matter, and I'd like to share them. This isn't a full review, as I'm not done. As I'm not done reading it, or I don't feel I've read enough of it to give a full review of it. However, I've read enough to share my impressions of the game. So that's what this vlog is going to be about. It's my impressions of the game Numenera. And my general impression about it is that Numenera is very creative and a very clever setting. I'm very excited to run the game and play it because the setting that the creator came up with is very inventive. And again, not a full review. I can't even say the creator's name. Anyway, it's very inventive and very clever. I like what the creators and designers came up with. For one thing, it kind of reminds me of a cross between Warhammer 40,000 and, if you've ever read the Vampire Hunter D books, it's kind of like a cross between those two settings, only with more hope. But it reminds me of those two settings, and it's very interesting. It's set up in a way that it's filled with science fiction, but it's in the vein of fantasy. Pretty much everybody in the world lives... Alright, well, essentially, here's the gist. For those of you unfamiliar, Numenera, it takes place on Earth, where you are a human of the 9th world. This means you exist on the 9th Earth. There's been 8 ages, or epochs, or eons, however you want to refer to them, before you. 8 worlds that have risen and fell before you. And your world is comprised of the ruins and the cast-off of those previous advanced civilizations. Now, each of those made their own separate advancements, their own immense tribulations. The world is littered with vast machinery, nanites, denizens of other worlds that have come here, both extraterrestrial and ultra-terrestrial, interdimensional and extraplanetary. Is littered with mutants, abhumans. It is littered with ancient automatons, genetically spliced creatures, the superhuman and the subhuman. It's a world filled with the leftover marvels of 8 dead worlds. And the people living there don't have the best understanding of it. In fact, they only have a functional understanding of it so far as it allows them to continue living their lives safely. To the extent, for example, you might find a mining village who their sole purpose is, or their main form of trade, economic, whatever, is from the mine. Now, what do they mine? Not necessarily ore at all. In fact, their mine might actually be more of a ancient ruined factory, and what they are mining out is ancient weapons that have been solidified into the rock beneath them. Weapons that were so durably made and so powerful that the kingdom pays well for miners to dig them out so that it can equip its soldiers with those weapons. Nobody really understands quite how they work. They just have, they have these people called Aeon priests who have studied them enough to figure out how to turn them on, and the soldiers have kind of, through trial and error, figured out how to use them. But it gives them an edge over other nations, so it works out well. It's that sort of setting where you have... It's built on the notion that a sufficiently advanced society, a society that is advanced so far beyond your own in technology, the technology will appear as magic to those less civilized. They won't understand what makes it work, and it'll just appear as magic to them. Well, this world's littered with that technological magic. It is everywhere. The game makes it clear that the entire Earth itself isn't quite the same as we understand it. Right down to the soil is no longer the original soil, but a remanufactured synth soil called Drit, not Dirt. And there's just nanites everywhere. For example, you might have entire cities built on ancient complexes, not because they understand how to use those ancient complexes, but just because building your city on top of that complex protects you from the monstrosities that live in the purple jungle below. A jungle that may have been created by an ancient genetic splicer as the trees move and the denizens are most strange. They could even be from another world. Who knows? Nobody really knows the history of the past 8 worlds. This is just the world that they live in, and they make it work. That's what I'm talking about. It's a very inventive and very interesting setting. You can come up with anything that does not make sense and make it make sense in that you just don't understand the mystery yet. That's just one of the mysteries of one of the past worlds. You can, for example, you can have mysteries like you can come across automatons that are half mechanical and half wooden. Not to say that they were automatons made out of wood. No, they were grown automatons. Why not? It works. It's the right type of mystery for this sort of setting. And it's very creative and very fun. And it brings a new sort of freshness to this idea of like fantasy roleplay. Because all the people in this world have a fantasy understanding of the world. The Aeon Priests and the one nano character type have a slightly better idea of what's going on. They at least understand that it's not actual magic that they're dealing with, but ancient technology. But as for that, their understanding of that is only a smidgen better than the rest of the species. And I say the species, but humanity is just as varied now from experiments from the past worlds. There's so many mutants and superhumans and subhumans and abhumans and visitors from another world, half-breeds, transhumans. It's all there. But people's understanding of it is just as low as ever. That's why I'm seeing tinges of 40K and Vampire Hunter D. It's similar to like in 40K how all that technology is old and being rediscovered, and in Vampire Hunter D, the world was remade to the vampires' desires through genetic and mechanical experiments. So the world just looks very different because of all of these past things, and it's very interesting. It's very refreshing. Now, that being said, unlike the Gentleman Gamer, I actually do have some problems with the game. As I said, I'm very excited to play it, and I love the setting. It's very fresh, and it makes me excited to make stories in that setting. Now, where the game is flawed, I feel is in the... Well, it's in the system. The system itself is flawed. Traditionally, it would be what I would describe as a new school sort of game, in that the system itself, it's fairly rules light. It kind of front loads its math a little, but generally, I think it's more it's simple in practice as opposed to simple to read. I mean, because of all the front-loaded math, some of it will seem a little daunting or confusing at first, but fundamentally, I think it actually narrows it to very few mechanics. There's actually not a lot that you have to do. For one thing, it's mainly based around just a D20. You'll also need percentiles and a D6, but mainly the D20 is all it's primarily what you'll always roll. You don't have to roll other dice for damage or anything. Damage is set based upon weapon type or attack type. And, the types of challenges that you're going against is pretty simply said. It's on a chart, and that's fairly simple. But past that, the game is biased towards making players feel powerful and give them authority over the game. I say it's biased towards that. It's not completely built to take away authority from the game master and give it to the players, but it is biased in that direction. The mechanics... There are several points in the mechanics where it essentially stresses the player's experience over the game master's ability. Essentially, it's trying to make the system more fun for the player at the expense of the game master being able to tell a story. It's a little hard to describe, but that's why I say it's a bias. For example, there's something in the game known as a GM intrusion, where essentially during combat, and as I said, this is my impression, I could have this wrong, but as far as I read it, in combat, when your player suffers a detrimental effect, such as they miss a roll, and you describe them as, they drop their sword because of their miss, that is known as a GM intrusion, and you have to award experience points to your players because they had to suffer a GM intrusion. And in fact, they had the option of choosing not to suffer that GM intrusion. They get the option to veto your call as to what happened in the game. And if they don't veto it, they get awarded experience points because they had to deal with a challenge. That's tremendously dumb. Tremendously dumb. I get, and the reason why it says that it does that in the game is because you don't gain experience from killing monsters and doing everyday challenges. You know what? It says that, discovery is the heart of the game, and I'm perfectly fine with that. If you want to dictate that, as a game master, you should only give out experience points for certain atmospheric sort of things to kind of like set the feeling of the game, only give out experience points for completing an adventure or when the players are clever. I'm fine with that. I'm completely fine with that. You know what? I'm completely fine with that. But when you say that you have to pay your player experience points in order to dictate negative things that happen to them, that is tremendously stupid. I mean, look, it's simple. Bad things happen. Deal with it. Now, there's no give people experience points because bad things happen. They happen! And it's just little things like that. Here and there are little mechanics like that, or little descriptions of how things work that describe it in that way. Players have to be made to feel special and powerful, and, their experience is paramount to the game master running the game. Don't get me wrong. It is a good game master's job to make sure that his or her players are having fun, and they should do their best to see to that. However, their main job is to run a fair world, and it is not fair if you award people for bad stuff happening. I mean, especially if it's caused by their own stupidity. If they run up and they decide to attack, I don't know, a mech tank that is made out of animals and scraps, and they decide to charge up and attack its giant metal head with their sword, and they hit it as hard as they can, and they fail their roll, and it jolts the sword out of their hand. Tough shit. Deal with it. I don't have to give you experience points for that. That makes no sense. If anything, I get that you could argue that's a theory of, oh, well, you learn from your mistakes. You're right. You do learn from your mistakes. That doesn't mean I should award you for making mistakes. So there's small things like that are biased towards player authority and overpowering player. But that being said, it's flawed. It's not broken. I feel that those things that are, biased that way, or things that just I feel like are a little complicated, or not even necessarily complicated. There are some systems such as effort that I feel that, I get the intent behind it. I don't think that it was carried out necessarily how it should have been to meet that intent. But that being said, I don't feel that ruins the game. I feel that it is a exciting, refreshing game to read over, and I'm looking forward to running it. I just feel that it's flawed, and the flaws aren't enough to ruin the game for me. Heck, I can just rewrite them to, how I see fit. That's the great part about being a game master, is you can rewrite the rules and insert ones yourself. You can mod the game to make it run better to how you like running and to how your players like playing. And for me, the experience system is probably one that I would rewrite, it is one that I'm going to rewrite. But that's just an example. I mean, generally, I highly, just like the Gentleman Gamer, I highly recommend that you pick up the PDF or find the book and, give it a read over, because it is a refreshing setting and a very interesting world. When you read it over, I hope you get as excited for it as I am. Just be aware that if you have some the old school mentality, there might be some things you disagree with. Don't worry about it. Just, rewrite the rules that you don't like and insert ones that work more appropriately. Otherwise, I totally am. I'm gonna run a game. It sounds like a blast, and I recommend to anybody who's interested in something new and refreshing to check it out, because it looks really cool. It's just flawed. That's all. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all I really got for you right now. Yeah.